So I think, the key with Spotify is we want to enable your library on all these sort of devices, whether it's a set-top box, whether it's an Xbox, whether it's a mobile phone. That doesn't really matter for us. We want to make music like water.
That was Daniel Ek, creator and current CEO of Spotify at South by Southwest in early 2010. Spotify is obviously doing pretty well right now, 9 full years after that South by Southwest talk in 2010. Here's some proof. Spotify, an independent Swedish company, currently controls over 36% of the music streaming market. In January 2019, Apple Music had surpassed 50 million paid subscribers worldwide. As of March 2019, Spotify had over 100 million paid subscribers worldwide. But what does
music like water
even really mean? To learn that, we've got to go back to the beginning of Spotify. Ek has always been an entrepreneur. When he was 13, he was building websites for clients. By 18, he was managing 25 people, and his business was doing over $50,000 in revenue a month. By starting and helping build these internet companies, Ek became a millionaire by the age of 23. Right around then, he started working on Spotify. But why? The biggest catalyst to him starting?
He goes to Napster.com to get all the music he wants, and he doesn't pay for it.
Napster was an extremely popular music sharing site, started in June of 1999. Napster was founded by Sean Fanning and Sean Parker, two people that had the idea to make an independent peer-to-peer file sharing network. Instead of uploading a file to a server, then someone downloading that file from the server, peer-to-peer file sharing skips the server, and the file goes directly to whoever wants to download it. While Napster wasn't just for music, around 61% of the files shared were MP3s. Napster grew to over 80 million users in just 2 years. But the biggest problem Napster faced was that what they were doing was very illegal. So
a federal court ruled Monday Napster must stop allowing music fans to swap copyrighted material.
In July of 2001, Napster was shut down after a court order. But right after the shutdown of Napster, illegal music sharing site Kazaa took its place. After seeing the fall of Napster and the speed of Kazaa's rise, Ek was sure that music piracy was here to stay, or at least a version of it. In a 2010 interview, he said, "I realized that you can never legislate away from piracy. Laws can definitely help, but it doesn't take away the problem. The only way to solve the problem was to create a service that was better than piracy and at the same time compensates the music industry. That gave us Spotify." Here's where the
music like water
comes back into play again. First off, why would big labels agree to put their music on Spotify? What music labels didn't realize is that Napster didn't hurt their sales at all. In fact, CD sales grew by 8% in 2000, when Napster was at its peak. And in the 6 months following Napster's shutdown, CD sales dropped by 5%. This doesn't seem to make any sense. If illegal music downloads were on the rise, why would physical sales of music grow? Because the people buying CDs were not the same people downloading music from Napster. So instead of stealing their market share, Napster making music more widely available boosted CD sales. That's cool and all, but why would labels agree to let Spotify have their entire music libraries? The main labels that Ek needed to partner with were Sony BMG, Universal Music, Warner Music, EMI, and Merlin. Ek decided to sell these companies a combined 18% equity stake in Spotify for a measly $14,000. This was incredibly smart because now the most important companies Spotify would need to have on board with their business model now had a vested interest in its success. Label revenues and sales were down at the time of this deal, so they practically had nothing to lose by agreeing to it. Also, Spotify sweetened the pot by promising to pay labels 70% of the revenue for the plays of their songs. Having these labels on board allows Spotify to have a massive music library of over 35 million songs and 20,000 new songs being added each day. Ek having the early revelation that music streaming services were going to be the future gave him a huge leg up on other streaming platforms. Spotify was launched on October 7th, 2008. Apple Music wasn't launched until July 30th, 2015. This gave Spotify a near 7-year head start against Apple. Apple still had iTunes, but you had to download and pay for each individual song and album you bought, and some individual songs were up to $2 a piece. Music labels were willing to go along with the iTunes model because it still matched their traditional idea of selling music, and only changed that idea so people could buy songs individually instead of whole albums at once. The second largest part of Spotify's success? Fixing latency. This boiled down to what Eck wanted Spotify to be since the beginning: a seamless listening experience. Think about how quick a song on Spotify loads. There's a good reason for that. In a 2016 interview, Eck said, "We spent an insane amount of time focusing on latency when no one else cared because we were hell-bent on making it feel like you had all the world's music on your hard drive." Making Spotify's load times feel instant has to do with latency. The amount of time it takes between the click of the play button and when the song starts playing. With pirated music, there almost isn't any latency because the files for the songs are on your hard drive. But for a streaming service, when all the music you listen to comes over the internet, latency could present a huge problem. Almost no one would want to use a music service that takes 15 seconds to load each song. Spotify uses a combination of cached music, peer-to-peer file sharing, and preloading other songs in your queue to make it feel as close to downloaded music as possible. Because Spotify had labels on board and they were able to make streaming more convenient than piracy, they grew quickly. You probably wouldn't be able to guess how little Spotify's ad revenue makes up of their entire revenue. For 2018, their ad business produced the equivalent of $609 million, or 542 million euros, in revenue. But Spotify Premium produced a little over $5.3 billion in revenue, a total revenue of around $6.1 billion. Spotify's 2018 ad-supported revenue only accounted for 11.4% of their business, and Spotify Premium revenues accounted for nearly 87% of their business. Needless to say, Spotify Premium subscription revenue is a big deal for them. For that reason, more recently, Spotify has launched what seems like an all-out war against Apple. Apple takes a 30% cut of whatever revenue an app gets through the App Store, not just of the sale price of the app, but any and all in-app purchases too. Meaning that any user that signs up for Spotify Premium through the App Store costs Spotify $3 of their $10 monthly subscription price, and that adds up for them. Let's just say, for example, that out of all Spotify Premium subscribers, 15% sign up through the App Store. Because of Apple's 30% fee, Apple would have gotten $238 million from Spotify subscriptions when they own a competing app, Apple Music. Spotify announced this problem with Apple through a YouTube video and a website, timetoplayfair.com. The video does a great job of explaining their issue with Apple's fees and supposed unfair business practices.
If you were to upgrade to Premium in our app through the App Store, we'd have to give Apple a whopping 30% of your subscription fee. Apple knows we can't afford to pay that tax and keep our prices low for our fans. So we decided not to use their payment system. But Apple won't let you pay by any other way. Because Apple is both owner of the App Store and Spotify's competitor, they set themselves up to be referee and player in the world of audio streaming. They've been using this power to give themselves an unfair advantage that harms fans like you and companies like us.
But overall, Spotify is striving. Remember that $6.1 billion revenue? That's a 30% increase from last year's $4.3 billion. Also, Q4 of last year was, quote, the first time in company history operating income, net income, and free cash flow were all positive. Spotify is able to compete with 3 different trillion-dollar companies in the music streaming business because it's just plain good. It's easy to use, fast, and feels like all the world's music. Things are looking up for Spotify, whose growth shows no signs of slowing. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Spotify's growth and their strategy to get there. And if you'd like to see more of my content, check out my channel and subscribe because I'll be uploading weekly videos on topics like this. And most importantly, thank you for watching.